What's good? Chilling. Great chilling. The name's Lamarty Mar. I'm alongside the man named Beans. What's good, bro?
Man, you already know, man. What's up, peoples?
Hey, you got the hat today. Tell me about the bucket hat real quick.
Man, I don't know. I got one early on. This is an older one. I had this for years, but I just really started feeling them, man. I like how you can rock them outside, get that little shade going, especially line work. And the older you get, the more you start realizing, all right, I'm outside more doing stuff for longer. You definitely want that shade.
It's
So
blocking your sun. It's blocking the sun. It help block the sun from your face.
yeah, even on the
A little
inside of the house, the lights and everything.
bit. Yo, we here to talk about perspective of our sports. This is great chilling sports perspective. Yo, we've been talking a whole bunch of stuff about assessing and valuing, parents and Generation Alpha. And it's finally time, we get into the wheelhouse a little bit and talk about sports. So great chilling sports perspective, talking value in the NFL draft, faces at the NBA, why LeBron, speaking of like old, right, he's still the oldest face of any league in the world today. And NIL impact. Eric DeCosta, GM for the Ravens, said something interesting that I want to bring up. But first, let's talk about the emergence of the women's game. What have you watched the women's national championship? Okay. Or what is your perspective uh, on currently the women's game, college basketball to be specific?
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody from the stats right tuned into that one. And if you didn't, you were checking on it, which I think is, the huge point when you say the emergence of the game, right? It definitely captured, I would say, attention across the US for sure. And when I think of stuff like that, I think of people who may not even be into sports, right? Especially females on they made, oh, I can't stand football, right? I can't stand
Do
basketball,
you
but
think college basketball attracted the casual female? Because that's kind of like the big tipping point for ratings.
I honestly I would say yes. I would think yes. And when you see those numbers, I would say yes. Just in general, I think that interest is sparked. We know how media is. You receive news and articles on things you don't even want to see half the time, right? So the way that was going with the off the court antics, right? As well as on the court with brawls and things like that, controversies. I'm definitely sure that a lot of females were drawn into it because I can even, use my wife for example, who really watches sports when I'm watching it. I mentioned, Angel Reese, right? She knows who that is. I mentioned Caitlin Clark. Oh, I know who that is. I don't even think she has seen a game with them playing. I'll be
Mm.
honest. So it's one of those where, that could serve as that example of, yeah, they're tracking who, these players are, and they are reading these articles. They are seeing the media attention that they're getting. I had looked at some stats real quick earlier just to see, the last 3 years, the viewership, because everybody's talking about, oh, this year is, by far the most, right? But what about what it looked like the last 3 years? And what I gathered, it was like 3 million, 4 million, 4 million, and then all of a sudden it's 24 million, right? So that huge jump, right? So from that information I gathered, I think the real question is really what is affecting, like what do you think is affecting, the viewership? Like what do you think is
Well, it's
leading to
definitely
the
stars.
emergence?
It's definitely stars, right?
Okay.
So, but if you do the Pareto analysis, the Pareto analysis,
Uh-huh.
80% is 80% of the problem
80-20, right?
yeah, 80-20, right? So
Yeah.
if you back up and you say, okay, stars, because stars is always going to be at the front and center of attention. But when
Yeah.
you start backing up, how do those stars actually become stars? And I think the college women's game does a great job of allowing the women to be themselves. And they just stay longer, right? They're 4 year stars. They what the Grant Hills and Christian Laettners and all the old like the Ray Allens, like they stayed in college more than 1 year, more than 2 years. They're in there for 3, maybe 4 years, so you get to enjoy them for a longer period of time because Iowa is not really at the centerpiece of anybody's attention. You know what I mean? It's Caitlin Clark.
That's
It's Caitlin Clark.
That's huge, right? Schools like Iowa
You
and
know,
look who played on the guys side too, Purdue. So
yeah,
but
but
yeah,
men's college basketball been in that rut for a minute because their players don't stay that long, right? Like
yeah,
Kentucky was home of the one and done, but when you got John Wall, Anthony Davis, Karl Anthony
yeah,
Towns, you got legitimate bona fide NBA stars going
yeah,
in after 1 year. Not everybody's like that. And I think men's college basketball got to a point where like, all right, not everybody's like that,
yeah,
and the women's game came around at the right time. Like it produced stars at the right time. So
and,
now you got the Caitlin Clarks. And yes, this was the most watched basketball game since
yeah,
2019. So when you say basketball game, I'm talking about the Milwaukee Bucks finals. We're
yeah,
talking
that's
about
true. Yeah,
any programming outside of football and the Olympics. This national championship game succeeded all that. You know what I mean? And it
yeah,
had actually 4 million more viewers than the men's. So when I
yeah,
look at the women's games, because they're staying longer, like you said, they're able to express themselves on and off the court, and they have great coaches too. Because you can't
yeah.
forget about Kim Mulkey, Dawn Staley. They've been doing an amazing job. Gino Auriemma, like for years and years. I
And
think,
I
yeah.
like. Oh, sorry,
Oh no, I'm
I cut
good.
you off. I didn't mean to do that, but what I like was you brought up Gino, right, from UConn. But before I get into that, my biggest thing is from the other side of it, right? You mentioned the stars, right? So I do think that's an aspect, right? They're definitely getting more attention. Instead of one player, two players, it's like across the board. Even after the championship, right? They're highlighting the freshmen, right? They're giving them love, showing them love. But the other side, I will say that I think definitely helps them out a lot, and it goes into that boat of negative attention isn't always a bad thing, right? So you do have the Angel Reese outspokenness, right? And I think that brought attention in general to the girls' game. Just similar, it may be seen as negative, right? But at the same time, the guys' game, what's going on there? And you probably heard my joke in the past about Draymond choking people, right?
Stop.
Back in the day, you got Dennis Rodman, the bad boys. You had certain things going on that were controversial, right? And when it came to the competitiveness, and then people were watching, right? Because they're like, oh man, what's gonna happen this game? Like, who's gonna get a crazy technical foul? Who's gonna, and that draws in, the fan base. And with the females this year, you kind of saw that way more on their side. Like you're over here, like girls are fighting and getting suspended. After the conference is out, what is it after the game? The media conference after the game, where the coach is up there. You got LSU coach who kind of plays that villain, right? And it's like, they're ready. What is she saying? She like one of the, those coaches that's gonna be outspoken and be like, hey, whether you want to hear this or not, this is what I'm gonna say, right? So I think that those are those things that have changed in the game where I think that maybe more of that conservative nature that used to exist. Like it's pretty much like, hey, we're gonna play now. We're
We're gonna
gonna
be us,
compete.
like Dawn Staley,
We
all her outfits. She be rocking Gucci, Fendi. You know what I mean? Like she be
she's
on the
bright, right? Yeah.
sideline styling. Like she be styling. And that's what like a
Yeah.
lot of the men's do, right? When they have their walk
Yep.
in, when they come into the game, when they walk
Clean.
into the stadium, they clean, they
Clean
fresh,
or just way off, right?
they
Just
icy. You
like
know
but
what I mean? Like they express themselves. So
they're expressing themselves. And I think that was a big thing. The other part I think that, to that question is kind of detracts from viewership, right? So when you look back and everybody's like, oh, is the game emerging? I think back to why was the game not at that level, right? We kind of got to it may not have been at that level because maybe more of conservative play, a little more, less antics, things like that. But also too, I was reviewing. You mentioned Gino from UConn. I always think of that, right? Anytime think of women's sports, a lot of times, and especially basketball, it's like the domination effect. Like
mm-hmm.
fans, you want to watch something where you don't know who's going to win, right?
Right.
Because then what's the purpose of watching the game? Because if you think about even the NFL, if there's that bad NFL team playing, and we talked about this on Thursday nights, we're like, it could be two of them playing. Somebody's going to win, but they're not even. You don't even want to watch them. So
Right.
it's like,
And you
so
bring up
so
a
at the end
good
of the
point. You bring up a good point because let me just inject right there, right?
yeah,
Because the Gino Auriemma era with Deanna Taurasi and all them, it was a straight monopoly. You know what I mean? Like you just
Yeah.
knew they was going to win every time.
Yeah.
And he even said, if you don't like it, don't watch it. Don't
I
watch it.
remember that,
Don't watch
right?
it. And it's
But
like,
that's
yep,
ain't that gray area though? Because
it
then the
is a
gray
gray area.
area is like you want to dominate, right? But then that leads to what exactly what we're talking about. Less exposure for your whole league. And what's the purpose, right? So even then off of Gino again, pulled the stats, right? So UConn literally, these are their championship wins. So they won in 2000. And I did the ones that are like consecutive, right? Because what I'm saying, talking about more about is a domination effect. So they won in 2000, 2002, 2003, 2004. Then they had the slight stint of a break, right? So then their next wins were 09, 10, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Like, listen to that. You're talking about three stints where 3 to 4 years, UConn is
Yeah.
they're winning every year, right? So
Yeah.
then when you wonder why people are like, man, I ain't watching this. Wait,
But it's not just that they were winning, they were winning in dominant fashion. So
that's
Iowa has Caitlin Clark. She broke Pete Maravich's record, right? She broke
yeah,
all these all-time records for NCAA.
yeah,
But when she went, and then LSU was the national defending champions, and they
yeah,
went in the game, and the spread was at -2.5. So you're a betting man. You would bet that, right? You would bet you're going to put money into that because you think you're going to watch that like 2.5,
because you
3.
don't know. Yeah,
But when you're like a 10-point favorite, or when you're like a 20 fit, like in the game, the spread is just way out of control.
and, and
And
I
even
think
when New
yeah,
England, someone will say, well, yeah, New England got 7 championships, but they still watch the NFL. Well, no, you got to look at New England regular season, postseason,
yeah, that's
look
true.
at
They
the other
talk about that.
conference. You look at the other quarterbacks at the time. Peyton Manning only got one. Aaron Rodgers is still struggling to try to get two.
Yeah,
Even my boy, Joe Flacco, came away with one. You know what I mean? So like it was a competitive environment. And I'm not mentioning the Philip Rivers who got denied. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? I'm not mentioning the Russell Wilsons and who
yeah,
got denied. Like there is a story there behind every championship. The Rams, Kurt Warner, like the greatest show on turf. Like they
yeah,
were taking people down. But with
yeah,
UConn, in Geno era, they wasn't like they was taking down a Dawn Staley. And that's probably when the script started to flip, when Dawn
yeah,
started getting up there. Because now we watching Fendi and Gucci and Prada. Like we inside, like we outside, like we watching them
yeah.
girls really get down
And
against the UConn era. But just to emphasize
you
that
you
point.
made a good point too though, and that's still a code I think they have to crack as well, which is that discrepancy, right? The spread. Because I can even say even back then it would be like, okay, if they're not in the top four playing somebody in in the top four, it's gonna be a massive blowout, right? That was like back in the day, like you said too, is like if it was number five playing number 25 or even number five playing number 15. It was like ridiculous. It's like 40 points, like spread. You're like, whoa, right? So it just made that gap of competitiveness and made you not want to, watch as much as, but like you're saying now, I think that gap is closing. Similar to the men, which we, we'll probably discuss in another fashion, but that gap is closing. That could be, transfer portal. We'll get into that in the NIL talk. But definitely, I do think the game is emerging and it will
Yeah.
continue.
Let's talk about NIL though,
Yeah,
because Angel Reese was playing at Maryland and she transferred over.
it's
You
true.
know what I mean? And let me just plant this question for you in your mind, in anybody's mind that's watching, right? Because there's grand success at the women's college basketball level. And we know that there's grand success with the men's football, basketball. I watched a little bit of college baseball. I actually like women's college softball too. But just to plant this before we talk about NIL, right? Like, how do they sustain success in other sports? I don't really know that answer personally, but I know that Angel Reese did an amazing job of using the transfer portal and leveraging her skills to get NIL, right? So I mentioned this in the opening with Eric DaCosta, and I said that he had a great quote. He was saying that NFL players stay in college longer now because they get paid more. And going back to the first thing that I said with the women's college game emerging, right? They are staying in college more. How do you think NIL transfer portal has impacted a lot of today's game, just in general, from pros, college, all overall?
I think in general, it's definitely made it, it's kind of evening the playing field. Um, Pretty much a segue from what we were just talking about to now is that you are getting that more competitive environment now because players are maybe transferring and seeking those moves due to potential more exposure, right? Which could lead to NIL deals. Currently, I looked at something today. Uh, Currently, right now, there are 2,386 players, and this is just NCAA football,
Mm.
right? So that's one key fact too. And there's 2,386 players currently in the transfer portal. I would say from like about last month till now, and it's only April, right? So last month till now, it already is up by almost 800 to 1,000 more players, right? And it may even grow even more,
Yeah.
especially as we push the draft is coming up, right, and things like that. So that just tells you that level, and not to forget either. That's just football, even basketball. Even after the game, they were talking about the women's game. They were talking about players already making moves in the transfer portal. So it's definitely changing the game. I think the big thing you already hit on is that you mentioned that. Would you say that the coach said or somebody mentioned?
Yeah, Eric DeCosta, the GM for the Ravens, said the NFL
Yeah,
players stay in college longer because they're getting paid more. Like Caleb
yeah,
Williams at one point was getting paid than most
and
of
he
the
said,
roster of the Los Angeles Rams. So why would I want to go into college? Angel Reese was making a whole lot more money than she would probably would in the WNBA. Why would she be in a rush to go over there? Like,
yeah.
you know what
And
I'm
I
saying?
looked at the top paid players too as well, and
Ronnie
uh,
James was up there, I think.
I want to say Shador Sanders.
George Sanders.
One. He's one. And then I looked at the financial part of it too, and he's at like they got him approximately 4.5 million or something like that as of right now. And then the top 10, nobody's under 1 million. Put it that way. So just like you're saying, it is going to keep you in college longer, most likely if you can make that type of money and then still be that college student, right? That college
Yeah.
kid, and less pressure on you and things like that when it comes to the sport.
And this is what I was thinking too. I was literally thinking about this earlier today. DJ Burns Jr., I think he's 6'8", huge guard or huge, sorry, forward for
Yeah.
NC State, right? And he's just like a post playmaker. You know what I mean? I was talking to one of the homeboys. I'm like, bro, if he was in a video game, he would be a 6'8", 280 post playmaker extended from like the elbow, like just spinning off you with
Yeah.
like Trace McGrady quickness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and I saw that he's got like a couple six-figure NIL deals. And it had me thinking, like, I don't know how well his game is going to translate into the NBA.
Yeah.
I really don't. I always hope for the best. But when I look at a player that big, that's almost like a lineman playing basketball. Like an NBA does not, you know, you got Rudy Gobert ready to run up the
They're
same
slim
taller.
bigs.
Yeah,
They're slim bigs now.
yeah, and but they're still like they're still big, like you know what I mean. But like they
Yeah.
slim, like they up and down the court slim. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like they're not taking plays off. He had
Yeah.
one rebound, DJ Burns Jr. He had one rebound in the Final Four game. One 6'8",
Yeah.
280, dominant big man. So my thing is that I'm thinking like he's got his six-figure deal. Does he really
He's
need to go?
dominating.
He's dominating. He's got his money. Like what do I do? What would you do if you was DJ Burns? Like you know that I'm not okay. So I'm not saying he's not going to be good in the league, right? But let's say someone like DJ Burns Jr. might say, you know what, man, I had a great college career. I made a lot of money NIL. I don't. Is there ever a crossroad where you say I don't need the pros? I'm good. I'm just going to get my education. You know what I mean? Maybe you get that thing a shot, but you just in your head you like, yo, I'm good.
That's a great point you bring up because you could have that. And I think you may see that. I'm not going to say it would likely start this quickly because it's new, but you can easily see it into a point of, man, I done racked up 12 million in college and I want to be a real estate agent. That's what my
Exactly.
goal
But
is.
you said with the top 10 is like no one's under a million.
Yeah, I didn't see anybody under a million
Oh,
in that
that's the
top
top
10.
10. But then if you
Yeah.
start going down, a million is, I don't know if that was an arbitrary number or if that was
But
like a,
but I will say this too though, out of there, like, past there are individuals on there where it says not disclosed.
so let's just say
So
like on average they're getting about six, 700,000. You know what
yep.
I mean? Because I think Dion was like 50,000 NIL, bro. That'll get you a walk on. You know what I mean? So like what how much is enough? You know what I mean? To where like, all right, I'm gonna actually be a real estate agent. I'm gonna invest my money, I'm gonna buy a home, I'm gonna rent it out, maybe buy two homes. I'm gonna rent them out, and then I'm gonna just
Yeah,
but
but I use real estate agent as an example,
no,
right?
but it's a
I'm
great
basically
example.
saying follow your passion. You literally are like, I made $12 million. I'm gonna follow my real
But
passion.
12 million,
Uh,
like not everybody making that type. Like I'm trying to go back
no, I got you.
to the common pool of people.
Oh, the comment pool, but you're saying, but that's what I thought you were getting at is when do you make that decision? Like, you know what, I'm good, I made enough money. And that's what I'm going more towards the higher end. I could see doing that in the future because if they're seeing this now early on, we all know how money grows. Like, so next year it was for this year. We talk about these contracts, right? Like they was talking, I saw an article about what they say for the we were joking about the Texans quarterback. And we
Yeah,
like, man, you already know he's gonna join when but his contract comes in, it's gonna be over 60 mil. You already
right.
know his contract offer if he stays healthy, right? And then everybody's gonna be like, man, that's a lot. And it's like, but that's just how the economy moves. So next year, you already know it's gonna be probably like the highest paid gonna be like 6 to 8, maybe. It's just gonna, I think, continue to grow. But even then, I would like to also pose, the great side of it as well, where this whole thing originated, right? A lot of it stemming from college scholarship athletes, right? Not being paid and bringing in a lot of money into their institution, right? So, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's fair that because I'll pose the argument that I've heard, right? I'm not saying I'm picking one side or the other, but you got a free education, right? A lot of people that usually say that are non-athletes. Oh, well, you have a free education. I have a million bills stacked up after I graduate that I have to pay back. But you get to go to school for free. And now you're getting paid now too, on top of that free education. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
But it was bound to happen. And the one thing that sparked my mind as soon as you finished that sentence, it was elegantly put too. It's commercials, bro. Like when I'm watching the game, and I was talking to my professor at William and Mary about this, my business analytics curriculum, is that if you take any random 10-minute span of TV, college basketball, college sports, how much of that is commercials and how much of that is the game, right? So when you look at that, it could be 50-50. It could be 60-40 commercials. It'd be 60% commercials, 40% game. Why are there so
Mhm.
many commercials? If I'm going to sit through commercials, I should, as an athlete, college athlete, be privy to pay and compensation. Because me as a viewer, I'm now not just tuned in for the game. I'm tuned in for the value of the talent on a court. Because I could watch any game. I could watch any sport. I could watch anything
Yeah.
on TV. So if I'm going to tune into Iowa LSU, if I'm going to tune into Iowa South Carolina, if I'm going to tune into Alabama Georgia, like the players deserve that because their airtime is being, and then they travel to different time zones. They're asked to wear different jerseys. They got different like traditions. They're bought in. They're recruited, pretty much. Like it was way
They
overdue.
become the face of the university that can even bring more
You become the face of the
regular college
university.
students, honestly, because we know some college students are fans, like hardcore fans that you see in the stands, right? They're like they love that university, and when they get that player,
Not to
they're
mention, where
following.
do where do scholarship money come from? Where does this money come from? It comes from
Yeah,
donors. Like we West Point grads, right? We're gonna do a product review later on, but we West Point grads, right? So like, if we see what we like on the field and we want to donate, not that they probably don't need our donation, my $5, but they,
50 Cent too, yo. I got you.
hey yo, y'all, shoot, man, y'all need some candy, man. Y'all need some candy for the game with $100. Maybe I
So
want
granola bars at halftime. Got your granolas and your oranges
Hey guys,
slices.
we got breaking news. 2011 alumni Lamar Simmons, man. Just got everybody chewing granolas right here. One each, one each, one each, one each, one each. but but for real though, like we see somebody on TV balling out, and
That's a good point,
we
though.
want to put in a little bit more, you know. So if we put in a little bit more, and then you got the viewers or what, like they should be compensated for something. But I was sometimes on the side of the fence where like, yo, they're getting a college education. But then it got to the point where like, yo, it's not enough because they are being asked to do way too much. Where do you stand on that?
That's what I think is underestimated for the general populace is how much time and effort college athletes put into their sports.
Mm-hmm.
It is literally a job. Um, when they're not when you are outside of class school hours, you are usually at the stadium training. You're usually at the stadium watching film. Um, Even then, when your season's over and you're not on TV, it don't stop either. It gets worse because now you got off-season workouts. So it's like people don't really see that behind the scenes. And then even worse so behind the scenes is what? Therapy. Now you done pulled a hamstring. Now you hurt. Now you injured. Now you got medical stuff going on. It's just a lot to it, that, I would say that other side matters as well. Cause I can see both sides, but as you eloquently stated yourself, um, that the commercial, I do think that the money is coming in these days, the way, technology has advanced and what we're doing right now, when it comes to that in media and advertisements, streaming services like we talk about, that's huge,
Streaming
right?
wars.
Streaming wars. It's just like it's just a lot out there that lends them to be like, hey, we need some compensation ourselves. So yeah, I like that. I like that conversation. I'm sure we'll
It's
touch on
dope
it again.
because let me transition this way because Kate Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese, right? That was a marquee matchup. Even when Jalen Hurts was playing, college football, even when you had Deshaun Watson at one time playing Lamar Jackson,
Yeah.
Clemson and Louisville. Like you have these marquee matchups, and that is what really draws viewers into college college sports. But it's
Yeah.
really the TV, whether they're playing college or NFL, because they end up going to the NFL, they end up going to the NBA, the WNBA, and that brings me to the NBA. I don't feel like there are many marquee matchups in the NBA anymore, and I think that has I talked about it earlier jokingly that LeBron James is the oldest face of any league that we have on the world. You can put him against Steph Curry, but I mean, Steph's got his rings. Steph is in California. He's going to continue to break records. He's going to do his thing. Um, LeBron, he got the ring in the bubble with the Lakers. He's got his ring with the Cavaliers. He had his rings with the Heat. He just wants to play with his son. Like I don't see the Lakers winning the championship. I don't even see them in anywhere championship contention. I see the Nuggets as the dominant favorite. Like, what happened to the faces of the NBA, bro?
I mean, really, when I think of that topic, right, it is crazy because LeBron is that much older, right? And I didn't even we probably should peep this, but who's the youngest player right now in the NBA? Because you remember back in the day, the one and dones, you had people getting in the NBA straight out of high school, right?
Yeah.
So think about that age gap with LeBron being still the face because he was known when he came into the NBA, right? Direct. He was the face immediately, right?
G-
So it's kind of
GG Jackson, the 45th overall pick in the 2023 NBA draft, who was born on December 17th, 2004. LeBron James is currently the oldest active player in the league. And GG Jackson plays for the Memphis Grizzlies. It was
yeah.
funny. I saw a post with Chris Paul. Chris Paul coaching AAU team with GG Jackson on it, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that's what's crazy though, is that even with that age discrepancy, like when you say the face of the NBA, it's showing that nobody is still close
Not
to
even 20 years old.
LeBron's image and caliber, right? So
Mhm.
even at 20 plus years older than that guy, he's still like, hey, we rather put this camera on LeBron. Whereas when LeBron came in the league, even though he had other players still there that were stars, he was getting some camera time, right? And that's what we're looking for is who's the next person that's coming that's going to bring that. So the other part that I think of when I think of that is our foreign players. So I was looking at the list of currently right now, this season's top 10 players, right? So listen to this. This is in order. Top 10 players this season as of right now. They got Doncic. Did I say that right? I said Doncic. Luca. I'll say Luca. And then he's from Slovenia, right? You got Joel Embiid,
They got to give you some speaking lessons, bro.
Joel Embiid, Cameroonian. Then you got Jokic, right?
What'd you say?
Serbia, Jokic, right? Then you got
Yo, it's
You
Jokic.
said what?
Jokic.
Jokic.
Yeah. But you can say
I said
Jokic.
Jokic. All right, yo, you defeating the point, man. So then he's from Serbia. Then you
Uh-huh.
got I'm doing this on purpose, yo. I'm doing this like, hey, Ryan, yo. This is on purpose.
You got Jokic, Doncic. Who else?
You got Giannis, obviously Greek freak. Then you got Shea Alexander, right? Canadian. And then the next ones following them, who we just talked about, right? AD. Then you got LeBron. But then you got Sabonis, Lithuanian. Then you got KD. And then you got Jason Tatum last. So out of that list of 10 top players,
Murray ain't
6 of the
nowhere
10,
there. Jamal Murray, Canadian. He ain't nowhere on there.
yeah,
Victor
in that top 10,
Wembanyama, he ain't nowhere on there. Like
not this year.
you know what I'm saying?
So this is the thing. They might be in the top 20, but what I'm saying from the top 10, this is what I'm getting at the 6 out of obviously the 10 players, they're foreigners. And then even of the 4 players that are on the top 10, they're on the back end.
Yeah.
So you're talking
Hey,
about AD is young, he's 31, but we know he's injury prone, right? Then you got LeBron, you keep saying the oldest is 39, right? Then you got KD, who they don't, I'll be honest, I don't feel like they even talk about him in the league and highlight him as much as they used to at all.
quiet again, like the
And
Suns,
yeah,
bro. They
and
not
he's
beating nobody.
35. He's 35, and then Tatum's the youngest at 26. So I mean, when you break it down like that, I think that I mean the question that comes from that, which I think is been kind of spoken about already, is is that good for the NBA, or how do you think is that good or bad for the
I
NBA?
think
You
it's
think
good.
moving
It's good
forward?
for the NBA in a way that's financial because you're able to capture other markets. Like, so you got Slovenia, you got France, you got Canada, you got a lot of different international markets glued
Yeah,
into the game. And that's what the NFL is trying to do, right? They have tried to have games in London, try to have games in I think they're gonna have a game in Brazil this year. So the NFL is trying to do the same thing, but they don't have Slovenia football players, Brazil football players.
yeah,
Basketball is such a global sport that it was bound to always attract that, especially when Michael Jordan boomed. You know what I mean? I mean, if you do the math on it, 96. I mean, this guy was born 2004, Gigi Jackson, but that's the youngest player. But we're talking about international players. It's been such a boom since the game went global. I can even go back as far as go Bird and Magic. Um, so I like that point that you were saying and bringing in that because I thought about the foreign players too. But another thought that came to my head today was that there are no more old heads governing the bench. There's no more Jawan Howards, no more Udonis Haslams. There's no more guys at the end of the bench. My boy from Dallas, man, he played in New York for a little. Like Amari Stoudemire was good, but I'm thinking about another dude, light skinned dude. He used to dunk like crazy too. Big man enforcer. But there's no more authority in the locker rooms, I feel like, older authority. Like LeBron could be sitting there and being a mentor, but
like the mentorship types.
Yeah,
that we
but
talk
he's
about,
still
like the
average.
NFL, like the old NFL quarterbacks that you don't even know they playing until you see them with the headpiece on the side.
Right. There's not enough
I got you.
Chris Pauls or Haslam.
Yeah,
Like, you know what I mean? Like that's mentoring the Jimmy Butlers and the Tyler Heroes and the, guys that like at a bayou. Like there's no, and I know those guys off the top of my head, right? So because the culture was built in
yeah,
Miami and it's still standing, but there used to be cultures in Charlotte with Larry Johnson, Muggsy Bogues. You know what I mean? There used to be cultures. There used to be a culture in obviously Chicago. There used to be a culture in Phoenix. There used to be a culture in New York, John Starks. Like there used to be actual cultures within the teams in the league because you had old heads like Charles Oakley. You had old heads like, you know, obviously Charles Barkley at one point when he was getting older, but there's a
but I
lot
think that was
back.
yeah, and just to tie into what you're saying is, I think that's one key point of it. But I think that that was broken when I think LeBron made those big moves, right, and show like, hey, despite that this is an unpopular decision, but it's my decision, right? And that was different. Like you said, those cultures are allowed to be built built when players are staying there, whatever remaining, they can build on what maybe they accomplished a year prior, right? But you do have a lot of movements now. You have a lot of
A lot of
the
movement.
market. The market is a thing. Because we all know financials is like, hey, I'm going after who's going to give me what I want.
Yeah, because that's
Versus,
that's a great point because
yeah,
let's listen to these names. And this is what I was trying to bring up. Tyson Chandler,
yep,
Sean Bradley, Eric Dampier. These are names that we know of. Like when you hear him, you're like, oh,
yeah,
okay, okay. All right.
yeah,
Now, Eric Dampier wasn't the greatest player, right? And Sean Bradley wasn't the greatest player either, but you knew they stuck with their teams. You knew that there was a presence somewhere in the
yeah,
locker room. And you know that they wasn't trying to like, man, you know what? I'm about to just go to Miami, man. I'm good here, bro. I'm out. I'm chilling. I'm out. I'm out. I gotta
yeah.
go get this bread. And then you end up going over there with a whole bunch of super young people. You like, man, I can't take this no more. I got my money. I'm out of here. Or
Right, right.
maybe they just an older team and now you just become all the way irrelevant. And there's no new energy because we need new energy. New energy is important. And I think if they and then they got to be willing to take it. Jason Tatum is somebody I think can take it. Like he can take it. Jason Tatum can take it. Shea Gilders can take it. Anthony Edwards can take it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like these guys can take the face of the NBA, but they gotta
yeah,
win. They gotta win. They gotta win now. It can't be like, these rebuilding projects and stuff. And you gotta be able to beat the best. You gotta beat Jokic. You gotta beat Jamal
yeah.
Murray. You gotta beat Michael Porter Jr. You gotta beat Aaron Gordon. See, they have a whole team and a culture. You know what I mean? Contavious Power, like they KCP, they got people. You know what I mean? Like
And I
these
think the
teams
big
got
thing
people.
is when you say the face though, you're also talking about the big moment, right? Like love the NBA all day, but I'm not. I'll be honest, I'm not like driving home speeding trying to watch a regular season game
Me neither.
because I
It's
already know
Thursday today.
yeah, exactly, because half of the time somebody may find a reason to sit out to the point where they had to make a rule that you can't just be sitting out anymore resting.
Right.
And that's one thing. But again, it's like I think as long as they continue to, like you said, find that or step up is what I'm getting to, is step up in those big moments when it comes to the playoffs, because that's when everybody's watching, right? And they even talk about James Harden, how he's been playing in the playoffs, and even Embiid had a bad playoff, last year, and they get beat up for it because it's like, hey, if you're going to be the star, you're going to be the face, you got to show up when you're supposed to show up, when you're expected to show up, because obviously some of those names you mentioned back when they knew they was gonna show up every game. It was a matter of how much. It was like, hey, Charles Barkley gonna get his, but you know whether he win or lose, they joke him without rings, but ain't nobody say he ain't do his thing out there, right? So it's like one of those where he is showing up, and you do have a few of these stars that in the last few years for sure you just like, whoa, that's a dud, and that's where I would give Steph, and Golden State when they had their run, I'll give him that credit because obviously he was showing up, plus the Draymond then. and the Klay Thompson then. You know, it was they were them boys. They were like the Bulls, right? Like they were gonna show up every time. You weren't gonna get all right today. Jordan's gonna walk off the court with 3 points, 3 rebounds, which we see today a lot. I'll be honest,
Mhm.
especially with stats and things like that. Is that some of these numbers are just they're phenomenal when you start looking at the paper and you're like, this dude even he just showed up to what touch the ball and pass it once and then
Stop, stop.
like, come on, man. But it's not every player, obviously. But what I'm getting at is just that, I think that face of the NBA, when people are saying that, that's probably what they're more so getting at is those big moments, like, with when Kobe, Jordan, and all those people, even LeBron, they're like, who's going to be that next person
Yeah,
that when
it's up for
playoffs
the
start
taking.
is like, I want to watch.
It's up for the
Uh,
taking. I've heard some narrative about, hey man, you can't give Jokic the MVP again. He's not deserving or is going to do something, whatever. But like, if he's the best, he's the best. He's the 41st overall pick in the draft. 41st means he's second round.
didn't know that.
So it means
Yeah.
he went after and got it, bro. You know what I mean? So then I'm looking at the NFL draft and I'm thinking
Hmm.
about value in the NFL draft, value of the NFL draft. Where is the most value at? I know the Ravens, they've always been drafting very well. Ravens fan, or you're a Cowboys fan.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack here. The draft is in like 2 weeks. It's amazing that it's came this quick. Um, and I think they've done a good job of keeping the NFL relevant all year round. Like when
They
you think
have.
of Taylor Williams now, he was tweeting back at Greg McElroy for facing adversity and said, "Hey, I popped my hammy. I did this. I did that. Like I faced adversity. Sorry, I faced
Oh,
adversity before.
looks like you need a speech.
I need to speak Slovenia. I need Jokic. I need a Jokic, man.
Jokic.
I need a Jokic, man." But anyway, man, like Texans, the Texans have made some amazing draft moves, and I think they have an ideal model of how to go about it. But I want to hear what you got to say about the value in the NFL draft, with it being so close around the corner now. I want to hear your
I
opinion on
mean,
the
I'm
NFL draft.
I'm in I'm in I'm indifferent, man. I just feel like, football is more of a team sport, obviously, all the way. Compared to basketball, where it's like, oh, you get this top player, that could be a huge difference in your season, um, and everything, that surrounds that. Football is just, to me, I think the value is more so in those not so top picks of the draft, but just those good players, which does take the research, which does take some analysis. And there's only a few, franchises, and we talk about this all the time, that I think really put that time and effort into to find that. And that's what makes them successful. So I do think that the draft it has value if you make it have value. But I think when you just go with the media, which a lot of times I think some of these franchises they allow the media to steer them in a certain direction, and then they get that bust that they done paid all this money for. I think that's where you just lose immediate value in the draft. But really, from what I feel like I've seen the past few years, I think a lot of the value comes from those moves that occur outside of the draft. I'll be honest. I just think that those teams that are able to make those player transactions throughout the season, uh, whether it pays immediate dividends down the road, it just seems like, okay, I see where they're going with this. And it meets their intent, what a lot of people say, right? When they're over here like, oh, we'll trade this person for a 2026 draft pick. We'll trade this person. And you're like, for what? But at the same time, if they got that vision, it can't just stop there. It can't say, I'm going to do this for 2026, 2028. And then now during the season, when people are making moves and gathering players, you just sitting back with your arms crossed, not making any moves. Because this year, I thought, unless it was a media thing that it usually happens, they just don't report it. But all the way up into the Super Bowl, players were getting cut. Players were coming in activated off the injured roster, IR. I don't think I've seen that in the past. where players are literally being brought on team. I think your team was part of that, right? The Ravens actually
Yeah.
made some moves like that during that before the championship game. And you're talking about the game before the Super Bowl. People are making transactions and roster moves. So I think that franchises that are able to hone in on that, and as you stated, the Texans, I feel like they definitely right now are probably the best model of effectively using your cap space, and then also player player and talent management, actually assessing that field and what you can do right now with what you got.
Because see, I looked at the stat here. Only 44% of first round draft picks from 2011 to 2020 have signed a second contract with the team that drafted them. You know what I mean? Only 44, so less than half of the first rounders kind of pan out in a lot of ways, right? So a lot of value is being acquired later in the rounds of the NFL draft. And that's why I said the Texans got a good structure because they traded their second round pick for Stephon Diggs, someone that comes going to come in and make immediate impact. Not to mention the overall formula of having drafted a rookie quarterback. So we talk about 44%. I wish I could do a deep dive analytics
Yeah,
onto this because that of that 44%, who are your franchise quarterbacks? Because of that 44%, they sign that second contract, they might be a cornerback. You're not saying that's not valuable, right? That may be a secondary player or a lineman or, because now we know that you need to have a lineman or an edge rusher to get after to disrupt the quarterback rhythm, and then you need to have that quarterback. So they got my boy from Alabama to play edge, and now they got C.J. Stroud. So they have that format, and they got him on rookie contracts. So
yeah.
now you can leverage the draft by using your trade options and trying to bring in more veteran players. And again, like I said, with the NBA type of model that has been lost is you do have OGs on teams. Even Terrell Suggs, like they said, they introduced him the other day on Keyshawn Johnson's podcast I was watching, and he said 2-time Super Bowl champion. I'm like, when did he win two? And he talked about it when he won the second time he won it. Well, the first time he won it was with the Ravens, and then the
Yeah.
second time he won it, he won one with the Chiefs. And I barely remember him playing, right? But I'm not going to discredit that Super Bowl because I think that he probably played a massive part in their
Yeah.
locker room culture. So if you're able to leverage the draft in that regard, then you can be successful. But now if you just drafting willy nilly, and you're very good with this, you're very good with this assessing. We have our assessing the value series of
Mhm.
like, we did how we assess and value education, um, the workplace, and things of that nature. How do you assess and value talent in the draft? Right? Like, where do you stand with assessing value and talent in the NFL draft as it pertains to your teams or your ideal
I
team?
mean, I think that's what makes it tough, right? I think that's what you have those talent scouts for and things and such. And then you have, even I was watching the combine this year, I recorded it. And then you have those players that, they don't even participate. They choose to do a pro day at their school.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so there are some things in there, little nuances that, probably make it very difficult to assess talent. I'll bring up, I believe his name was Drake May, quarterback that keeps going up and down from is that his name, USC?
UNC, yeah, North Carolina.
UNC. That's what I meant. University of North Carolina. And I was reading some articles where I forgot who the guy was. He was like, he's the type of guy that'll get you fired. His play is just erratic. And he just went in, and it wasn't Rex either. But it's just one of those, because as I'm reading this article about a coach saying he'll get you fired because he didn't feel like this guy's draft worthy of at least that up to that level, top 10. The next article says a team is over here making trades so they can trade up to get him.
Well,
So
that's for like so much stuff behind closed doors, like just
yeah,
evaluate. And like you said, that's where, and I don't think it's a rocket science job. I think if you're a talent scout, you're looking at, for me, I'm looking at feet. I'm looking at, how good is he with his feet? How good is he under pressure? Obviously, if I'm doing an interview, how much does he love football? How much does he care to play for his teammates? Like, what kind of person is he? Um, Merrill Hodge, someone who I respect very dearly because he was once on a show called with Greg Cosell is on now and NFL Films and Darius Butler.
Yeah.
It's called NFL Matchup early in the morning with Sal Palantonio. And they just watch film. And he did it with uh Jaws,
Yeah.
Ron Jaworski for a little while. And Merrill Hodge comes out and he says, yo, Drake May is better than Caleb Williams. Like, you have to draft him.
Mm.
Like, he's shown a lot more NFL uh, capability than Caleb Williams. And now you look at that, like, well, but Caleb Williams is a gunslinger. He's been compared to Patrick Mahomes. But if you're a team that needs a quarterback, you have to take a shot. Now, what you can't do is you take a shot, it doesn't work out, and then you end up paying them like New York did. And now like they just when they signed Daniel Jacobs at 40 million plus, and they didn't sign Saquon, and then they just kind of disregarded Saquon. Then after he left, I think that was and disrespectfully too. I thought that was like not very a good formula for success. Um, like finding value in the draft is a strategic thing that needs to be carefully considered at every level, even at the re-signing, because we
Yeah.
see
And I think
have to get
and
re-signed
I,
the same contract.
and I think too, you just have to know your franchise. You have to know your culture, right? You have to know your system. And people will probably be like, what do you mean? They know their culture. No. That's why these coaches are getting fired, left, right, up and down, right? So certain teams, and we talk about this all the time, and a lot of people probably say this, like the number one drafted quarterback a lot of times doesn't pan out.
Right.
Why? A lot of times, what he goes to that franchise, right? We've had debates about this. He goes to that franchise. He goes to, the Browns. We joke about that. Like, what are the odds that somebody's going to go there at? But obviously, they did a little better this year. But back when we can go way back, it's like, what are the odds that they're going to draft a number one quarterback, no matter how great this guy is, and you're going to take him to the Super Bowl? No, why is that? Because of their franchise, their culture, their schemes, everything. Coach is. So it's one of those where I think that is also the other side of the draft. The gray area draft is that, oh yeah, we have the first pick. We want to get the guy that everybody else wants, and it's just going to change everything. And I'll even use old boy Bryce. I'll use old boy Bryce with Carolina Panthers. Like that was this year was like what? Oh man, get
And it's
out of
still
there.
it's still out. You know what I mean? We don't know. We don't know. We don't
No,
know.
but I'm not getting at him. I'm just saying I'm just proving that point of like this is kind of seems like it's the typical a lot of times where these teams do this and then they don't really have a plan. They're not really building correctly.
Yeah.
It's just
Okay.
like
Yeah. Because
we just want that number one guy because he is right now the best. Like considered the best in the draft, and it's
yeah.
nothing. He don't even fit them. He doesn't fit what they're doing, what they're trying to do. And it's not even saying he's bad because we've seen the same thing where quarterbacks. I always joke about it. Even at work, we talk football, and a lot of times you talk about Drew Brees, and it's like Drew Brees. He used to play with the Chargers. He didn't play. He didn't play his whole career at the Saints because all the success and everything he had was with the Saints. So people forget like he didn't start out with them, right?
He
And
went to
then
Purdue. He went to Purdue, not really well-known school for
yeah,
producing uh NFL prospects. Like it wasn't Bama at the time. It wasn't Florida, Miami. It was Purdue. Like
yeah,
it wasn't. I don't even know how many NFL quarterbacks Purdue is, and he was 6 foot. So again, that's
sure,
like the interview of like understanding that at the time too. You had brought up something I wanted to just put on real quick before we do a product review on every so often, but teams don't draft for the future, right? They don't draft for it with the plan. It's a lot of teams and organizations, NBA and NFL, right? They are drafting for now. And I
yeah,
get it, but you need to have a development plan in place. You know, Peyton Manning was horrible his first year. Lamar Jackson wasn't the best his first time when he was in the playoffs. They was calling Joe Flacco's name in Baltimore
yeah,
for Joe Flacco to replace Lamar. And Lamar had already won like a couple of games before that.
yeah,
So I mean, you gotta allow players to develop. And Joe
Yeah.
Flacco was a great mentor, I guess, from a distance. I know I'm not always in the
And some franchises are good with
yeah.
that though. It's not all of them,
Jordan
but we know
Love,
the ones
Aaron
that aren't
Rodgers,
good.
Jordan Love, Lamar
Yeah, we
Jackson.
know the ones that are
You
not
know,
good.
yeah, we know the ones that are not good. And then there are some people like Justin Herbert. They come in and they're ready to play. CJ Stroud come in ready to play. Like there's a lot of players that a small handful that come in and ready to play. But for the most part, they need assistance, man. So good topic on the NFL draft, yo. But like I want to close it out with the like nice little product review. Great chilling sports perspective, man. I always want to try to like bring it in, yo, because I feel like I could talk. I mean, there's so many different nooks and crannies,
So many angles, man.
so many different like perspectives that we can take on this, like the women's game, NIL, the transfer portal, faces of the NBA, the draft coming up. The Masters have just started. Tiger Woods is trying to go out there and still compete. I like to watch tennis in the summertime. My daughter was born around Wimbledon. I like to watch. I like to watch the best of the best, you know, go against each other. I love baseball.
Shoot,
Baseball
baseball
season is
just
coming.
kicked up. That's what I was about to say.
Baseball just kicked up. They had a whole series in Korea, which was amazing, and they have a lot more stars coming in too.
Yeah.
Ellie De La Cruz, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Gunnar Henderson, Aldi Rushman. Like they got so many different players, and these are some of my favorites, of course. I'm not even talking about the Juan Soto's with the Yankees and the Aaron Judges like of the world. You know what I mean? Like those guys are still balling. Houston is still balling with Jose Altuve and what they got going on out there. But yeah, man, great chilling sports perspective, man. We trying to bring it in, yo, at all times, every sports, all that matters, yo. That's what we've been bred on. So I love to talk on it. But like, look, real quick, product review. Product review. You ready for this one, yo?
Let me see.
All right. So every so often, yo, every so often. Shout out to Kalichi Adosha, doing amazing things out there for the army. I saw this on his story, and I got a sweater from every so often. All right, so I'm gonna put
Oh, I
this
like that
in the show
that
notes.
wordplay every so often.
Every so often,
Yeah.
SEW. Every so often. Um, got an email. I might even ask them to put us in for some hats and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? They got the Instagram, Facebook, everything is lined up like that. It even said on the back, "Thank you so much. Thank you so much."
Yeah,
Yeah,
handwritten too. You don't see that
handwritten.
this day and age.
You know what I mean? So the packaging was amazing. It came in a nice, nice package
Protected.
type of
You
thing.
always want to protect it. You don't want it in a dented up box with you.
You don't want it in a dent in a box because then you open it up. It still could be fire, but it's chances that what I mean. Somebody might have wore it before you did.
Yeah, and then taped it back up.
But
Oh man. Ketchup stain on it immediately. Like, wait a second.
oh no, what was
Where does
that?
mustard come from?
You gotta get this out. But anyway, this right here is sewn to perfection. We got West Point Department of Agriculture here, established 1877. You know what I mean? I had to put the Uganda hat on it, man, because it gave me African vibes. African vibes.
Like that.
I mean, it's giving me that like true, authentic self. Like
That
it's
stitching looks lovely too.
yeah, you see how it's not some stitching is kind of like
You
kind
can
of
tell
loose.
strong.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like if I get
That
into a fight, yo, this might come in handy. You know what I'm saying? Like this might be a
hey,
little
that's not a one wash and done
no.
sweatshirt. Like that looks that's quality right there.
Yeah, this is quality.
Yeah,
So
that's
every
pretty
so
dope.
often, I just want to say thank you for the amazing sweatshirt. I'm going to place a personal order, and I'm also going to make sure I add your Instagram, your handle, your email, everything in the show notes, so that when anybody sees this, or if you don't see this, you just listen on audio. It's an amazing brand, it's an amazing shirt, and I think products are not only about the things that you buy and you wear, but it's also about who you represent And I can tell that this was done with an extra layer of concentration and focus. So,
And care. Yeah, that's what you're
care.
looking for. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what's up. That's dope.
So I appreciate you for what you're doing. But yo, great talk today, man. Is there anything else you want to lay out?
Nah, man. You know, we got to save it for the next episode.
Next episode coming inbound. Thanks for y'all watching. Y'all already know what it is. We stay on this level. You heard me? Great chilling.